The recent developments with the Chris Rock at the Academies caused me to think back throughout the whole history of Will Smith's career and how I became familiar with him from the get go. It was before Fresh Prince of Bel Air. He was just known as the Fresh Prince, a rapper from Philadelphia. And he worked with a more established rapper named DJ Jazzy Jeff. And the two advertised a 1-900 number in the early days of 1-900 numbers, and it promised a new rap every day. Now, I recently reviewed that old commercial, and the part where they promised a new rap every day is not in the commercial, but I remember it very specifically because it's a whole reason why because it says get parents' permission, discussed with my mom that I was going to make this 1-900 number call to hear a new rap from the Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff. Said something like $2 a minute and 35 cents each additional minute. I mowed grass, so I knew I'd have no trouble covering those expenses. So I called the number, and it was just the Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff discussing new shoes they bought or new t-shirt. Just random talk using that old definition of the word rap. I got conned. Well, worse than that, when the phone bill came, it wasn't for the less than $7 it should have been for. It was for much more than that. So I remember getting burnt by that. It was very disturbing. Taught me to never call another 1-900 number. But nonetheless, I got ripped off. So how many other child laborers were out there earning money to pay for this con ran by Will Smith under the name The Fresh Prince? So perhaps it could be said that upon the shoulders of child labor, Will Smith was raised to fame. Now I say that more than half jokingly because Will Smith is a very good actor, and he showed it in the early days of Fresh Prince. I remember I was watching with my mom a episode where he was taking speed and he had total meltdown, ends up in the hospital, and during the scene where he's apologizing to his uncle for what he's done and feeling real bad, he cries, he summons up these tears, and it was a very emotional scene. And even me and my mom both commented to each other, that guy can really act, you know. So early on, from the get-go, Will Smith established himself as a very good actor. Now, what it takes to be able to do that is a high level of emotion. So you can't pull these tears out of thin air. You have to have some source from that emotion and a closer attachment to your emotions than is typically found in most human beings. So now we get back to the Oscars meltdown. Now there's three angles that we have to look at this from. We all saw from the get-go when the joke first happened that Will Smith was laughing. But Jada was not, and that when Will looked at her face, that look in her eye communicated something to him that made him decide that he was willing to risk all the scorn of the world and possibly law enforcement. More immediately security at the event, but then law enforcement and other legal repercussions. They were willing to risk all that for one reason, that risk that's on Jada's face. Now, it's a very old saying that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Not hell has no fury, hell hath. Hath meaning that it's a very old saying, and in that old biblical type of English. Let you know this saying's been around for a while, and you better listen to it because it carries some serious weight. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Tyson Fury has no fury like a woman scorned. And so, Will was compelled because it said also in biblical text that a man and a woman are joined together as one flesh. And when have we ever seen such evidence of a man and a woman joined as one flesh when Will Smith became the hands and the legs of his wife, and she apparently maintained the mind, and she shared her mind with Will, and he shared his arms and legs with her, and together the two as one flesh united by the holy matrimony of marriage went up and slapped Chris Rock. A crime. A crime, as we all know it's a crime to go up to smack somebody because of some words. Words are covered under the Bill of Rights. Uh, Justifying violence is not covered under what is a way to retaliate for words that you don't like. Now, from Chris Rock's perspective, he's one of the things he's been accused of is that not so much that the joke was hurtful. Most people agree. Most smart people say that nothing should have been so hurtful by his words that they caused that reaction. But the criticism he has received by smart people is that the joke itself was bad. I mean, to a comedian, that's quite the insult. One thing to get smacked for a joke, but to get smacked for a bad joke. But now let's analyze that joke, seeing things fully in perspective, because Chris Rock didn't get where he is by telling bad jokes. He got there by telling very smart, precise jokes. So let's review the joke as it is seen through the eyes of Chris Rock. What you have to remember at a big celebration like this of the Academy Awards in Hollywood is that all of these actors and actresses are essentially already performing their next role, because the way people are selected for their parts is to epitomize something, to be the significant one that stands out. As when you have a statement to be made, you want that to be the person who makes that statement. So it could be said in a sense that each of the actors and actresses there are sort of auditioning for their next role. So as Chris Rock looks out on that crowd, and his duties are to find jest and humor among that crowd, he looked upon Jada Pinkett Smith, and he says to her, G.I. Jane 2, I look forward to seeing it. Something along those lines. Well, after watching Sam Roberts' take on it, he gave me some information I had forgotten if I ever did know it, and that was that there was a G.I. Jane 1 that starred Demi Moore. Now, I do remember when Demi Moore shaved her head bald. Demi Moore did something else back in her day. It was took a photo shoot of her pregnant, making a statement that a pregnant woman can be beautiful. And with the shaved head, it was a bald woman can be beautiful. And she got a lot of, press for that. Her picture shoot went around, and it made a statement. It's like women are not just sex symbols, that they are symbols of beauty in other ways. And what other way better shown a beautiful woman that's not typically considered a sexy picture is her pregnancy picture. And then also the shaved head picture, which led to the role G.I. Jane, which she was in. Whether the shaved head stemmed from the role or led to the role, I'm not exactly sure, but that's the way it went down. So when Chris Rock looked at Jada Pinkett Smith and he said to her, G.I. Jane 2, it wasn't a joke without thought. It was a joke of very serious thought, and she took offense to it. And why? Perhaps it was the 2 part, because what worse insult, what more indirect and hurtful insult is to say, baby doll, it's already been done. But Jada Pinkett Smith's criticism of Chris Rock came not at how hurtful the joke was to her from its precision or saying it's already been done, but pointing out her alopecia, because Demi Moore's statement had been bald, beautiful woman. Now she's already adding another B to that by being bald, beautiful black woman. But what Chris Rock didn't realize is she wasn't saying BBBW, she was saying DBBW, that being diseased, beautiful black woman. So that was her criticism, was that with his joke was he was missed the mark. She wasn't bald by choice, she was bald by this disease. So now let's look at the other statement they said about Chris Rock's reactions, that he should have retaliated. Some people say he should have retaliated physically. Well, first of all, at this celebration, you're presumed not only be the best in your field of drama, action, and humor, but you're also supposed to be ladies and gentlemen. So Did he fulfill his duties of there? Absolutely. I have no criticism for his actions and the way he handled what happened. In fact, the fact that he was able to continue on the way he did is quite remarkable. So, hats off to Chris Rock. Now, let's look at Will's reaction and what he did. And what type of role were we familiar with Will Smith typically playing? He is Independence Day. He's the young cop fighting for both his family and the system, and at the same time, and the people. He is the guy who's a survivor, who's going to defend his family to make it through the end of the world diseases and the robot attacks and whatever it is. He is the new American man, both fit and smart and honorable defender of his family. So it's not an unforeseen way of this man whose off-screen life is never really off-screen, because it's always out in the press because of, it's made public through his wife's television show, and it would always articles seeking out anything they could find on the man. If him and Chris Rock had thumb wrestled backstage, that would have been news. So this is a huge, huge story. So his reaction to go up on stage and slap Chris Rock, the way it went down, is not a Will Smith role. But let's look at the facts here. Everybody's had a job to do there in Hollywood that night. Chris had to put on his jokes. Will and Jada had to represent ladies and gentlemen and also be auditioning for their next roles. But there were security guards there who had an active job that night. And Will was being Will and marrying together his mind with Jada's, and also marrying his career on-screen life to his off-screen life, auditioning for his next role while yet performing a reality show at the same time he marches onto the stage. But where were the security guards? Now, had Will Smith had to battle the security guards on his way to Chris Rock to deliver the slap, now we might be talking about a whole different scenario. So rather than criticizing Chris Rock or Will Smith, let's ask ourselves what happened to the security guards. Because, first of all, this whole thing where it's been put on Chris's shoulders, well, he's not wanting to press charges, so it's not a crime. No, that's not how crime works. You commit a violent crime on somebody, that's a crime whether that person wants to accept the charges or not. At the point where Chris Rock said Will Smith just slapped the shit out of me, he testified against Will Smith. Will Smith did not deny that testimony. Will Smith went on to later apologize for that. So Will Smith immediately committed a crime. So when the Los Angeles Police Department says if Chris decides to file a report, they'll begin an investigation. They'll begin an investigation. Now, we all saw what happened, and it's already been admitted by Will Smith that it did happen. So the crime did take place. Now, any discussion over whether or not Kanye's recent actions have been crimes, now that needs to not only go on the back burner, you can put that back in the cabinet, because there's been no physical confrontation like we saw with our own eyes has already happened. So if Will Smith didn't commit a crime, Kanye certainly hasn't committed a crime. So, not to necessarily say that, that's in defense of Kanye. That's just you can't judge one and then let the other go, Well, Kanye's always been sort of a controversial person. Will Smith hasn't. So, then the other criticism has been of the Smiths' marriage, talking about their open relationships and that. Well, also, surprisingly to some people, it's in the Bible that the bed of the wed is undefiled. Now, what is meant by that? Well, when you have a case like this come up and you want to criticize and judge their marriage, then perhaps that's when those words come into play. And there's some... If that's what it takes for them to keep their relationship together and be joined together as the Smiths and take care of their children together, who is anybody else to judge that? Because they even have the words of the Bible that the bed of the wed is undefiled. Will Smith's making a sacrifice. I wouldn't be willing to make and haven't been willing to make. But yet at the same time, his marriages stayed together and mine did not. So, can I criticize and judge Will Smith? Well, if I did, I'd have to overlook those words, those biblical words, and I'm not willing to do that. So I'm not going to judge Will Smith's marriage. Now, I will judge the role that I see being played out there between Will Smith and Jada Smith, and that is, what roles has he been good at? The defender of the family and the one who rises up against oppression and human annihilation and diseases and robots and enemy of the state, even the government. He's always had to be the man against the huge, unsurmountable odds, and he's got that role there. Now, Jada Pinkett Smith, the only role I'm really familiar with her on is Gotham. She played the queen of the crime scene, the underground boss. I didn't like her acting, but she did definitely seem like a sinister person. So looking at her new character, sort of I didn't think G.I. Jane 2, I would think more like an evil space empress, like Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars, only a female version of her. It was very, very scary, almost reptilian look to her. And so what I'm seeing there to Smith, what reality name role should their family have? And I feel like it's looking at her and looking at him, and him representing America and her representing what she represents. The role I see there is America under siege. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.